Alright guys, so let's get our 4x6-inch watercolor paper. It can be either the Strathmore postcard that I'm using here, or you can just cut out 4x6-inch watercolor paper, no big deal. This is what I'm using. The next thing you'll want to do is print out the Alice in Wonderland illustrations that I have on the blog post, as well as the sentiments. And if you colored the mushroom from last month, you might want to pull that out. If you didn't, you can either color it now, use it black and white, or just skip it and maybe use a second of the Alice in Wonderland illustrations by John Tenniel. We can use them because they are currently public domain. I am also using ink spray by Delusions and crushed grape black marble, and I'm also using distress ink dropper in tumbled glass. I'll bring that out a little bit later. You'll see here that I'm going to use a little tissue paper that I had left over. This is the Tim Holtz butterfly tissue paper, but if you don't have the tissue paper, just use some texture type stamp. It doesn't really matter too much. I'm also using a washi tape with some numbers across it. That's basically, you're just really looking for a white and black washi tape. If it has some kind of typography on it, all the better. Now choose which of the Alice in Wonderland illustrations that you like the best. I had a lot of trouble choosing. I eventually decided to go with Drink Me Alice. I think it works with a couple of the different quotes, and I like two of the quotes. So what I'm going to do now is just fussy cut out the all of the images. I'm using the Alice and the mushroom that I colored last month. It doesn't matter if you leave some of the edge on the Alice and the dingbats, if you decide to use the dingbats later, because they're white and black and they're not real neat or anything. I also, when I'm fussy cutting, I don't worry too much about any of the little shading or like the flyaway hairs or anything like that. Basically, you just want to get the bulk of it, so the parts of the illustration that get the message across stay. Alright, so I've cut everything out. I also went in and used this little distresser tool from Tim Holtz to sort of rough up the edges. You can see that I didn't do that great a job fussy cutting my mushroom, but I'm not too worried about it. Now I'm just kind of figuring out where I want to put the sentiments, where I, basically sit here and try to plot out how you want to lay everything out. Yep, and that is how you use the distresser tool. But if you don't have a distresser tool, you can always use scissors, and it took me a second to remember. Yeah, so you don't do it like that. You actually open the scissor long way, yes, and do it like this, and it gives you a nice edge. But if you cut into the paper, maybe tape it down or something, because you don't want anything lifting off the postcard, or it might get caught in a sorting machine. If you have a sorting machine. We won't go into politics today, though. Alright, so I also pulled out this text stamp that I thought I would also use in the background, or this typography stamp, I guess it would be called. So now I'm just moving everything out of the way, and I'm going to use this ink spray just to get some color on this postcard. In hindsight, I wish I would have put a paper towel down, or some kind of towel under the postcard, so it would have absorbed all the extra ink spray. And for future reference, I hope I remember that. And you'll see why later when I flip this postcard over. So that's the crushed grape. Then I'm going to go in with the distressed ink tumbled glass and just drop a few drops on here. And then the next thing I'm going to do is take this little round sponge dabber, and with circular motions just sort of spread the ink around. And you want to spread the purple too. I'm just trying to kind of mix it in a bit. And because it's watercolor paper, the ink isn't going to stay exactly where you put it. It's sort of, it gets absorbed and moves around a little bit because watercolor paper has so much texture and stuff. So, and then I didn't remember where I had my stamping pad, so I thought I would just try something different, and I used the black marble ink spray and just sprayed on my stamper, and then I stamped the postcard. For future reference, if you want the actual text to show up, you might want to wait until your postcard has dried. That's all I can think. I think it just didn't dry, and that's why it got very blotty. But I still thought it looked pretty cool, and I didn't worry about it too much. And after I laid everything on top, you couldn't really see it anyway. So honestly, you could probably just skip that point. It doesn't factor in a whole lot after you add more layers. Then you just saw me take my embossing heater or dryer, whatever it's called, and dry it a little more quickly so I can start Mod Podging some pieces on there. Start getting the layers in. So I take an old brush, and I'm actually using gel medium here, but I'm not liking the effect. Generally, when you're using gel medium, you have to use a wet or damp brush. And I didn't bring any water out because I didn't think about it. So I do end up pulling out the Mod Podge. And it was glossy Mod Podge, which is, I really wanted a glossy effect anyway. And my gel medium, was actually matte. So I wasn't getting the glossy effect that I thought I probably would like better. So I laid the tissue down, and now I'm going to go in and just start adding all of the little cutouts and stuff. And I've laid down my Drink Me Alice. And then you want to make sure you get all of the little edges and stuff down. So make sure you get your brush in with some Mod Podge under the little pieces, because like I said, if you decide to actually use this as a postcard and mail it to someone, you need to keep it as flat as possible so it doesn't get caught in a sorting machine. Alright, and now we're going to add, I went off camera a little bit here, but I'm laying another little piece of the tissue paper that I cut off earlier over here, because I felt like the dark background was sort of blending in with my mushroom. So I added more tissue paper. And then I'm going to glue my mushroom in over that. Just more Mod Podge. And you'll see later, I'm probably not going to mail mine because I made some mistakes. Mostly I ruined the back of this by not laying some kind of towel under it when I did the ink spray, or maybe ink spraying it in another area and bringing it over, because I got ink everywhere, all over the back of it. Yeah. So now I'm going to lay the washi tape down and figure out where I want to put that. And because washi tape isn't really known for being especially sticky, I decided to lay some Mod Podge down there too. Make sure you clip off any little extra edges so that it's flush with the end of the postcards, the edge of the postcards. Okay, now I'm figuring out the quotes, and I realized I don't really want both of the quotes. It just became too much, so I decided to stick with Curiouser and Curiouser. Looking at this now, I might have printed this on printer paper instead of cardstock. I don't know. I wish there was like a paperweight somewhere between printer paper and cardstock. Maybe a lightweight watercolor paper would have been better. I don't know. But I feel like the cardstock was maybe a little too, I don't know, a little too thick or something. It felt real heavy to me, heavier than I wanted the sentiment to feel. Ideally, if my printer could have handled it, and I don't have the kind of printer that that will anymore. But I used to like printing on tissue paper so that way you could just lay it on, lay your Mod Podge over it, and it would just, the background would kind of disappear. So I went over everything with Mod Podge just to sort of seal it all down, and now the whole thing has a bit of shine. And then I let it dry for a while. I guess I probably let it dry for about an hour or so. I went off and took care of my grandbaby and made some supper or something. And now I'm just taking a black colored pencil and adding some shading around the sentiment just to give it a little more dimension. A graphite pencil will work just as well, like your regular 2B would be cool there, work there too if you don't have any black color pencil. And now I'm going to take my white gel pen and just go in and add some more visual texture to the postcard with some little circles and dots. Alternatively, you could do stripes, or you could do little triangles or stars, little asterisks, whatever scoots your boot. It's just a part of adding some more interest to the postcard. Then I found my stamping pad finally, which is good because I really wanted to add more, make this just a little bit more, a little darker. So I went in and I sort of spread the ink from the stamping pad onto the postcard, and if you hopefully you could see where I was leaning it diagonally so it would get on the front and the side of the postcard. And now I am taking a little Q-tip and just picking a little tiny bit of ink off the pad and just smearing it across the sentiment so we can get that sentiment a little more grungy. I wanted it to be not so white, not so perfect. Alright, and now I was thinking it was maybe a little too plain, and so I thought I'd pull some of those dingbats off the sentiment sheet and add them as well. So I'm going in with the Mod Podge and I am gluing that down. And I put a coat down before I laid the dingbats down and after I laid the dingbats down. I don't think you see it before I lay the door down. I probably forgot to hit the record button. Okay, and now I'm pulling out the same colors that I used in my mushroom and just adding a little bit of color to the Alice image that I used. Coloring over Mod Podge with alcohol markers is a little trying. It doesn't lay down as well as it would on your cardstock or whatever, but it does lay down, so you can do it. Try not to tear your markers up doing it. It's not worth it. Just lay it down lightly, make it scribbly. You're not trying to make it perfect, you want to keep it messy. And I'm going to go in and color her hair. And use whatever colors you like. I just wanted to keep it uniform because I did put a colored mushroom in. But if you ended up not doing the mushroom from last month, you can, and just do like 2 Alice images or decide to put dingbats over there, you can just always go in and use whatever colors you want. Whatever colors look good to you. And then I'm just doing that same grunging technique with the Q-tip and the Distress Ink stamp pad. Alright, and then I'm going to add a little more texture to the sentiment by adding some little dots and circles and stuff like this. Adding some dashes around the door. And then I write "Eat Me" to sort of be the complement to the Drink Me bottle, since it is right next to the mushroom. And if you remember, she eats the mushroom in the story, and that makes her grow bigger. I'm just adding a little more texture with some dashes along the washi tape. And I think that is about it. So as you can see, I mucked up the back of my postcard really bad. And now I'm thinking, well, how can I solve this? After I do all of this to it, I don't know I could probably still mail it, maybe put an extra stamp on it, but I would be concerned about it getting stuck in a sorting machine, to be honest with you. It would probably be better just to gesso over the back if you end up doing this to yours as well. But here you see me just laying some more, some scrap cardstock from the printouts. That, I mean, technically you could just add your stamp and your addresses and your little note too and try. I mean, it might get through. Don't send anything important, other than your art. Your art's important, of course, but, don't say, hey, you need to come to this funeral or this wedding or whatever on this postcard, because people might not show up because it got stuck in a sorting machine. And I'm just warning you ahead of time. Do gesso instead. Do gesso. Do a nice white gesso or black gesso and write with white gel pen, because that would look really cool. Anyway, so that is our postcard for Wonderland. Yay! I hope that you have enjoyed it. Please let me know. And thank you for watching. Bye-bye.